Hello, friends and fellow seekers. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice Podcast. My name is Elle, and today I hopefully have an interesting podcast for you because I'm going to talk about a lot of things that are close to my heart. And so over the weekend, I was speaking with somebody who I had just met, and weirdly enough, the spontaneity of running into this person and talking about different things that are interesting to us in the spiritual nature had led to many good back and forths, which I had mentally noted and try to put across in this podcast today. So a lot of the questions that he gave me were sort of about, like the Illuminati and the Freemasons. So I'm going to sort of title this, What is Evil? And we can talk about the two paths, sort of like the two perceptions of unity that you may have, the difference between the positive and the negative seeker, how the negative seeker skips the heart chakra, and if you're a positive seeker and you're not using your heart, what does that mean? We're going to be talking about what is magic, and I sort of suppose how do the Freemasons or whatever, all of those people play into that. And then lastly, we'll just kind of talk about what a balanced, undistorted entity would be, or how they would be described. It's sort of like the ideal entity, which you shouldn't necessarily hold against yourself for judgment, but that you can strive for, but in a loose term, okay? So we're going to be starting with talking about what are the two paths, and what is the two paths. So the idea is we are one, and so from this oneness, all of the creation has, come into being, a creation of love, which we will get into. But it has created, I suppose, free will. And through this free will creation, it allows the choice. So the choice of, I suppose, how to see unity and how to perceive the universe. So you may see unity and perceive the universe as all entities are of equal worth, or let's not say equal worth, but all entities and all of creation is of infinite worth. In other words, we are all the creator, and we are each other, and we are like one big body, and to hurt you is to hurt me, and to serve you is to serve me, etc., etc. Okay, so that would be probably the positive seeker's perception, and then you have the negative seeker, which these positive negatives, we call these polarities, but the negative polarity would have a perception, which, I could be wrong on this too, because I'm not a negative seeker, and I don't really study their path so much, but I, know a few things just to make more sense of my path. And so my understanding of a negative seeker is they are on that free will path of seeing themselves as separate from everyone. It is the path of separation. I suppose the way that they see themselves is that they see themselves as, I have the ability to serve myself, and there is all of this creation about me, and why shouldn't all of this creation, be ordered to serve me? Because I am a portion of the creator. But they probably aren't seeing themselves so much as that, as much as I understand that they think that controlling and enslaving things is the wise thing to do, because they are, they're controlling and manipulating things to serve themselves, and then they feel that they are sort of serving the other people in a way because they're not wise enough to sort of learn the same tricks that this person at the top of the hierarchy has, and therefore the person at the top of the hierarchy feels that they are teaching them a lesson in the ways of service to self by enslaving them until maybe they are wise enough to to make their way up the path, and we'll talk about that later. I just wanted to give a brief thing. So the two paths, the positive and the negative, and quickly, you would want to also note that the positive path is one that deals with acceptance, because all are the creator and all of creation is the one infinite creator, and so there is nothing to do but to serve, because everything's the creator. So whether you're serving yourself or serving something else, it's all just one big thing of unity. And so you work with the path of accepting things, accepting unity, and transforming things through acceptance, whereas the negative entities work with control. And so it's acceptance or control, and those are sort of the two paths and the two ways to perceive things. And you may ask, what creates the difference? So who decides what, and what makes somebody choose one or the other? So in the Law of One material, the raw material in session 19.17, the questioner asks, can you tell me what bias creates their momentum towards the chosen path of service to self? Ra answers, I am Ra. We can speak only in metaphor. Some love the light, some love the darkness. It is a matter of the unique and infinitely various creator choosing and playing among its experience as a child upon a picnic. Some enjoy the picnic and find the sun beautiful, the food delicious, the games refreshing, and glow with the joy of creation. Some find the night delicious, their picnic being pain, difficulty, suffering of others, and the examination of the perversities of nature. These enjoy a different picnic. All these experiences are available. It is the free will of each entity which chooses the form of play, the form of pleasure. End of quote. So you can see that there isn't a particular reason for why someone may be more polarized towards the positive or the negative. It is mostly just the infinity of creation just experiencing itself and resonating with what it feels, its path is. And so those are your two choices and the two ways to see things. And I would assume that if you're listening to this, you're on the service to others path, my friend. And so I welcome you. Welcome to love and joy and service and acceptance. So we will get into how the negative seekers actually skip the heart chakra, but I would like to first of all talk about this whole Freemason and Illuminati type people. Okay, so somebody asked me on the weekend there if what was my opinion of the Freemasons, because there's a lot of like good people in like the lower levels of the Freemasonry who may be wonderful people and doing good things, and so that, to my understanding, is a possibility and true. Even to share with you, actually, one of my favorite people to listen to, because he sort of was like, in my opinion, the originator of the podcast, was a 33rd degree Mason. He is long since passed now, but his name is Manly P. Hall, and you can go online and find a lot of tape recordings that have been transcribed onto the internet, which is from him, and he basically just goes into, like, I can't even tell you how many subjects. I downloaded like a large file of like 600 of his lectures, and they are just filled with love and wisdom, and he, in my opinion, is a good demonstration of a positive seeker. And so, like, when you're talking about the Freemasons, I sort of see that as them dabbling in magic, but the higher you go up, then obviously the more knowledge of self that you will be coming into, and therefore more power, etc., etc. And so it really just comes down to how you decide to use your power, and also how far you decide to, as they may say, polarize, or how far you may want to seek down your path and polarize towards either the positive or the negative. I would assume that a 33 degree Mason would be like a highly polarized being, but then they would also choose their form of play and pleasure, their form of magic, which either comes in the ways of service to others on the positive path, or the ways of service to self on the obviously negative path. And then so how are why do we not all paint all the Freemasons with one brush? The reason why is, to my understanding, sort of the negative power, the way it works is, if you can imagine the pyramid, they tend to compartmentalize things. So I would actually call it compartmentalizing knowledge of self. The most wise entities are at the top, who know how to control and manipulate to the the nth degree with psychology and all sorts of things that you probably haven't even ever thought of. They would hold that knowledge of self to themselves, because to share it with others would be a service to them, because it would show how to be manipulated in reverse. And so obviously the way that it works, really, in my opinion, is compartmentalization. And that, so the people at the very bottom of the pyramid of Freemasonry, in my opinion, they may just actually be good service to others type people. And a lot of Freemasonry, that's actually, it kind of preaches a lot of similar things that the Law of One does. I'm not completely aware of all of it, but I've, had a good look into some of it. Other than, the weird ones with the rituals and stuff like that. And so I would think that what happens is, if, there are certain people that join Freemasonry, and then they sort of show a certain level of polarization, and then the others in the group would, sort of maybe pick and choose certain people to sort of elevate to higher levels as they see fit, as they feel that it either serves themselves or their organization or whatever. Okay, but the point is I'm not going to paint everyone with a brush. And then if we wanted to use like the word Illuminati, well, I would just assume that is indicative of a negative seeker. That to me sounds like the the negative people that try to control and manipulate and enslave, because that is what they believe to be true in the service to self path, and they are only just sharing their version of service with us. It's like a spiritual gaslighting right there, because it's basically like, yeah, you have to accept their version of service, and you sort of go with your version of service and decide, well, my friend, how we solve this paradox is you use your free will to do as you see fit, but thank you, no thank you. I am going to choose the service to others path, and, I'm going to choose non-enslavement. I'm going to choose freedom and things of that nature. So let's get into how the negative seeker skips the heart chakra. And so let's just start with the quote so that I can maybe break it down a little bit after. So in session 47.4, Ross states, all beings have the potential for all possible vibratory rates. Thus, potential of the green and blue energy center activation is, of course, precisely where it must be in a creation of love. However, the negatively polarized entity will have achieved harvest due to extremely efficient use of red and yellow-orange moving directly to the gateway indigo, bringing through this intelligent energy channel the in-streamings of intelligent infinity. End of quote. So I'm sorry, that's probably very complicated if you haven't been reading and trying to understand the law of one for the last decade like I have. And so maybe I should try to break a little bit of it down. So all beings have the potential for all possible vibratory rates. So to me, when I read that sentence, I feel that we are a mind-body-spirit complex in this universe. And so that means that we are born with 7 chakras, and these 7 chakras are all born in perfect balance, in potentiation. And so only when we sort of incarnate and we experience our lessons and we evolve, do those chakras that are in potentiation, in perfect potentiation already, basically they're already complete in the sense of timelessness. However, you still have to actually activate them, I suppose, within time. So, as you go through the densities or the dimensions, you start at the lower chakra, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and you move your way up as you basically activate each chakra and you evolve along those lines. So all beings have the potential for all possible vibratory rates. In other words, you can have like an instrument, like the 7 chakras, like a guitar. You can have an infinity of rates between those 7 strings. You can pluck 1, 2, 3, or 4, or you can not pluck any of them, right? You can, or just pluck the very bottom one, top one. You can create some crazy balances, which you should be aware is a bit dangerous. But anyways, they say, thus, the potential of the green and blue energy center activation is, of course, precisely where it must be in a creation of love. So that's an interesting sentence right there. Thus, the potential of the green and blue energy center. So just so you know, there is, they talk about the 7 chakras a lot, but they do briefly mention that some of the chakras are more connected than the others, and they would sort of call them primary chakras or primary centers. And I'm sorry, I'm doing this a bit from knowledge. I could be partially wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct, is that one of the primaries is the red, and then the orange yellow are sort of also primary, and then you have the heart, which is like the green. However, it's like the heart and the speaking the truth of the heart is the blue. So the heart is the primary. Green blue chakra is another one of them, and then you have the indigo up top. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure. Anyways, you can sort of get the ideas. Sometimes when they talk about these chakras, although they're separate, they actually sort of lump them together. So that's what they're saying here. Thus, the potential of the green and blue energy center activation is, of course, precisely where it must be in a creation of love. So stop there again. My understanding is this is a creation of love. The universe was born upon free will and love, and it's essentially love and free will, those two things mixing together, which have created creation. So the whole of creation does turn on an axis of love. Like the one infinite creator is a creator of love is sort of the easiest way you may state it. And so what they're saying is that, the heart in the center, the green and blue ray, right, the heart and the speaking the truth of the heart are exactly where they need to be in a creation of love, which is in the center, and that they are possible to achieve. However, the negatively polarized entity will have achieved harvest, so I don't know, just will achieve success, in other words, like activation or along their path, due to the extremely efficient use of red, yellow, and orange, moving directly to the indigo. So red, yellow, orange are the bottom 3 chakras, and sort of the red is one of the primaries, and the orange and the yellow can be one of the other primaries, and then they skip the next primary set, which is the heart and the blue chakra, and they go directly into the indigo. And they say, directly into the gateway indigo, bringing through this intelligent energy channeled the instreamings of intelligent infinity. And, that's really complicated as well. But, the way I understand it is that as you sort of penetrate up into the indigo, whether you've gone there in a polarized positive fashion or a polarized negative fashion, then you shall sort of come back with, I would say, like magic in polarized in your favor in either positive or negative. It depends how you went into seeking that indigo experience. So, what you would be delivered is sort of like intuition or inspiration or creativity or, like basically any kind of service in the desired polarities. So either in positive or negative, depending how you've reached into the indigo, because as they basically are stating here, whether you're a negative seeker or a positive seeker, both can penetrate into that indigo, into that sort of one infinite creator, and can bring back, magic, gifts, inspiration, things of that nature, to help them along their path, I suppose. Okay, so that is my understanding how there's the 7 chakras and how they're used by each entity. The positive seeker seeks to have all 7 of them, in the long run. But however, I'd have to put an addendum there is that we're in the 3rd density moving into the 4th. So really that's super important is you get your basic 3 and, you work on the heart. And then the other ones may come easier and they may be a part of your experience, and that's fine. But really what's important is that we're using our heart as a positive seeker. And then the heart is as they say in other quotes, is a springboard to the higher energy centers naturally. So it just comes natural, right? As you access your heart and you find love and compassion, you want to go out and serve and share that love and compassion with others, or share that wisdom or whatever it is that, you've maybe come across. And then the negative seeker is one who, I never really described it here, I suppose, but when they use those red, orange, yellow energy centers, what they're doing is they are... Well, actually, I'll just read you this next quote because it's actually perfect. It's about how the negative seeker seeks control. And basically, this is the maximum use of their orange-yellow ray. So they state in session 54.19, the questioner says, in the case of service to self-polarization, what type of catalyst would entities following this path program when they reach the level of programming their own catalyst? Ra says, I am Ra. The negatively oriented entity will program maximal separation from and control over all those things and conscious entities which it perceives as being other than self. End of quote. So I suppose that's basically the answer right there. To maximally use the red, orange, yellow chakras is to sort of maximize the seemingly separation, and also to have a control over all those things, all those conscious entities which it perceives as not being part of itself, which is basically like saying, I don't care about the heart chakra. I don't care about compassion and understanding and loving you other self and seeing you other self as a being of infinite worth. You are something in my creation to be controlled, and I shall control you or, destroy you if I have to. Basically, whatever I need to do to retain my power or gain more of it would be the negative seeker not using their heart. And I didn't really describe the chakras. I have in a lot of other podcasts, but the orange one is so I'll start at the bottom. So your red one is the survival, how you feel about survival. I sort of say how you feel, okay? And then the orange one is about your personal sort of vibratory rates, your personal experience, like it's like the eye of your experience. And then the yellow chakra is more the communal experience, like you're part of a community now. It's like, how do you see other people? It's basically like what is in your life, right? Like in your sports and your work and your family and just basically anything that is just outside of yourself that you are aware of. So if you are controlling and maximizing the control of those things, then you're going on the negative path. Whereas if you are sort of through acceptance and discipline, but mostly acceptance with the personal vibratory rates of yourself and other selves and your place in society, and you work with acceptance in those areas, then you're going to be polarizing on the positive path. And this leads me into our next section about what is magic, right? Because when you're polarizing on either of these paths, to me, like you're basically, entering magical territory. Alice has gone down the well, or I don't even know, am I mixing that up? Okay, so a lot of people also, when you're going down these paths of trying to, seek the truth and know yourself and find out about intelligent infinity and all this fun, things that sound wider than us, is it will freak other people out. It'll freak out your parents or certain religious people around you who will just say, oh, all magic is evil. And so this is what this quote is that I would like to share with you, is that some people who they may be with love deemed called not free will see freedom as evil no matter what. And I would hope that you, at this point, if you've even made it this far listening to my podcast, would understand that you can have discernment about magic, and that there's sort of white magic and black magic, and it's about how you use power and how you use your will and what your intention is when you're doing those things as to what is the nature of your magic. However, it will still freak people out. So, what is magic? First of all, I'm not sure where I got this, but I think it is in the Law of One, but they've actually got it from a different book. But the ability to change consciousness at will, which I would basically agree with, to change consciousness at will. If all is seemingly consciousness, then, to be able to change yourself, is a large thing, and to change the way you feel and use your will in certain areas and point it in areas that's magic. Okay, but we'll state here in session 80.10. It is also to be noted that an adept is one which has freed itself more and more from the constraints and thoughts, opinions, and bonds of other selves. Whether this is done for service to others or service to self, it is a necessary part of the awakening of the adept. This freedom is seen by those not free as what you would call evil or black. The magic is recognized, the nature is often not. End of quote. Oh, that's my favorite part. The magic is recognized, the nature is often not. I seriously laugh I don't laugh, I don't know, it's kind of annoying to be honest, but a lot of people always comment on the Law of One Instagram, and they talk about how chakras are evil, and they actually warn you about, warn you about the chakras, like, oh no, how dare you know about yourself? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they actually think these chakras are something outside of themselves, that when we believe in them, we activate them and we're basically practicing magic and being evil, whereas I see chakras as just the description of the reality of yourself. You're a mind, body, spirit complex, and you are in a universe which is somewhat semi-divided into 7 densities or dimensions, and even within each 7, you can infinitely divide them into 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, and you can go far down into infinity as long as you just keep dividing everything by 7. And so you have 7 bodies and you have 7 chakras, and so you look at the rainbow and you see that manifestation in the rainbow of the 7 colors. It's literally just what we are. It's not like this is actually that intense or that adept. I think that we could probably teach this stuff to preschoolers, but that's sort of what the negative service to self elite has done on this planet, is to shield that information from us. Remember how I said compartmentalize that info, that knowledge of self from us, and hold it somewhere secret. But my friends, the way of nature and the way of magic is that even with those folks trying that, if your will is to seek the truth and to know the truth, you will find it. And I promise you, if you put your mind to it and your heart into it, magic will happen. Okay. So now let me talk about what is, how a balanced, undistorted entity would be described. What is the ideal person look like? Which I did just sort of give you an idea, but they go into a lot more detail. So in session 38.5, and when I'm reading this, I want you to know that it's the ideal, right? We may strive for the ideal, but we shall not hold it up against ourselves as judgment when we are not perfect. We seek to be perfect in a way, but better to seek to accept, the imperfections of yourself and see yourself as imperfectly perfect, which they'll actually describe here when they talk about trying to accept other selves. So the questioner asks in 38.5, could you tell me how each of these rays, red through violet, would appear in the perfectly balanced, undistorted entity? And stop real quick. Rays or chakras. Okay, back to the quote. I am Ra. We cannot tell you this, for each balance is perfect and each unique. We do not mean to be obscure. Let us offer an example. In a particular entity, let us use this instrument, the rays may be viewed as extremely even, red, orange, yellow. The green ray is extremely bright. This is, shall we say, balanced by a dimmer indigo. Between these 2 points of balances resides the blue ray of the communicator, sparkling in strength above the ordinary. In the violet ray, we see this unique spectrograph, if you will, and at the same time the pure violet surrounding the whole. This, in turn, surrounded by that which mixes, the red and the violet, indicating that integration of mind, body, and spirit. This surrounded in turn by the vibratory pattern of this entity's true density. This description may be seen to be both unbalanced and in perfect balance. The latter understanding is extremely helpful in dealing with other selves. In other words, to see them in perfect balance. Continuing on, the ability to feel blockages is useful only to the healer. There is not a tiny fraction of judgment when viewing a balance in colors. Of course, when we see the energy plexi weakened and blocked, we may understand that an entity has not yet grasped the baton and begun the race. However, the potentials are always there. All the rays, fully balanced, are there awaiting to be activated. Perhaps another way to address your query is this. In the fully potentiated entity, the rays mount one upon the other with equal vibratory brilliance and scintillating sheen until the surrounding color is white. This is what you may call potentiated balance in third density. End of quote. And so they describe here that it's not particularly the activation of every single chakra that is of importance, but about the seeming balance that you've created between them, because you are a unique creature in this density, and so you will have a unique vibratory pattern, and so that is just wonderfully fine. That's why I was trying to describe to you about better than to sort of strive to be the perfect ideal person, because that is very difficult in this density of the shadows and being behind the veil. You're better off to try to accept yourself. And also, as they stated in this very important part, accepting other selves. So remember, they say this description may be seen to both be unbalanced and in perfect balance. In other words, like when you look at somebody and you see them distorted, but they're they're imperfectly perfect, right? Even though they're undistorted in certain areas, their balance will be achieved, through different chakras, which may compensate, etc., etc. So they say the latter understanding is extremely helpful in dealing with other selves. In other words, to see them as in perfect potentiated balance. It's like, look, even though this person may be distorted and you may see blockages in them, that really only matters to you if you are a healer and attempting to help them. Otherwise, your concern with sort of if you could actually see these things in other selves, your concern would just be how to love and accept them, and possibly with the knowledge of seeing how they're possibly blocked, just be able to love them in an easier way, as opposed to just pretending that they're a mean person and just projecting reasons onto why you should feel separate from this person and hate them, etc., etc. Okay, and then this part is really fun, and I almost wanted to skip it because I know it might get a little long, but I'll try to keep her short for you here. But how positive seekers, although not using their heart, are still positive, but revert back into self instead of stepping into service to others. In other words, they revert back to their orange ray. So what I'm going to describe here is basically, I suppose what my thought is because I've told you guys earlier about how the negative seeker skips the heart chakra. You may think sometimes, well, if I'm not, using my heart, am I doing negativity? Am I doing evil? I would say probably not, right? Like you may be unpolarizing a little bit, but what's more likely to happen if you reject the heart is that you revert back to your orange ray. So, the heart is stepping into service to others, right? But if you were to go back from that, well, then you would just go back into sort of like, how do I see myself in my community? But if you go back even further from that, it's just like me at home being a homebody and just like worrying about myself and not interacting with other people and, just trying to figure out who I am based on my own thoughts, as opposed to not going out into the yellow ray land of experiencing other selves and projecting onto them and having my projections be corrected as they come back from other selves and other people help me to balance my personal vibratory rates by being honest with me. me and giving me feedback as to the things I do. Okay, so basically, if you try to separate yourself from society because you think society sucks, and I agree with you, right? But what you need to do is still attempt to have some sense of community, and then which will help you balance your personal sort of vibratory rates. I'm sorry I keep using that word, but balance your vibratory rates so that you may have enough energy to enter into the heart, into service to others, and love and compassion, understanding, and all that wonderful stuff. So in session 41.14, Ra mentions, in third density at this time, those clinging to orange ray have a much more complex system of distortions through which orange ray is manifested. This is somewhat complicated. We shall endeavor to simplify. The appropriate true color for third density is, as you have ascertained, yellow. In other words, like the third one. However, the influences of true color green, in other words, the fourth density, acting upon yellow ray entities have caused many entities to revert to the consideration of self rather than stepping forward into consideration of other self or green ray. This may not be seen to be of a negatively polarized nature, as a negatively polarized entity is working very intensely with the deepest manifestations of yellow ray group energies, especially the manipulation of other selves for service to self. Those reverting to orange ray, and we may add these are many upon your plane at this time, are those who feel the vibrations of true color green and therefore respond by rejecting governmental and societal activities as such and seek once more the self. However, not having developed the yellow ray properly so that it balances the personal vibratory rates of the entity then is faced with the task of further activation and balancing of the self in relation to the self. Thus, the orange ray manifestations at this space-time nexus. Thus, true color orange is that which it is, without difference. However, the manifestations of this or any ray may be seen to be the most various depending upon the vibratory levels and balances of the mind-body or mind-body-spirit complexes which are expressing these energies. End of quote. So I know that is really complicated probably. However, it's starting to make more sense to me the more that I read it over the years, especially as I see society going crazy. So those reverting to orange ray, and we may add, these are many upon your plane at this time, are those who feel the vibrations of true color green. So they feel the incoming energies of the fourth density, the density of love and understanding, the density that activates your heart. It's already here with us. It's overlaid of our current third density experience, is my understanding. So those who feel this energy right now, some of them are using it. They're stepping into service to others in their attempts to, I suppose, activate their hearts and to demonstrate their hearts. And then, however, there are some people who reject that, okay? And so they respond by rejecting governmental and societal activities as such and seek once more the self. In other words, they not only don't step into service to others, however, they are, sort of sickened with governmental and societal activities and sort of ostracize themselves from the community, I would imagine voluntarily, but basically that means they are then stepping away from their heart into the yellow ray, and then not only that is they're stepping away from the yellow communal ray of being a part of their society and just going back into themselves, into their minds. And then that's why they state here that the entity then is faced with the task of further activation and balancing of the self in relation to the self. In other words, thus the orange ray manifestations at this space-time. At this time, the orange ray manifestations are many. Can you think of some orange ray manifestations in life, my friends? Okay, so the whole last it's usually basically since 2015 with the whole infinite identities and pronouns and things like that. My opinion, this is exactly what that is it's the personal it's the orange ray manifestations at this time of people who are just sort of in their heads, and they're just reaffirming the things in their heads by going on the internet and going into echo chambers, and those echo chambers basically just tell them what they want to hear, and so they believe it. In other words, they don't get true love and true feedback from other people. They just get told what they want to hear, and therefore the self must try to balance itself in relation to itself with sort of no good outside feedback, and thus the orange ray manifestations at this time are many. And I don't want to just put them all in one basket. Like I do this myself, right? It's basically, it's a series of steps that happens, is that you're doing pretty good. I'm doing some good heart work, some good service to others. Feeling pretty balanced in my vibrations and in myself and feeling all right. And then, one thing happens to the next and the heart shuts down. And then when the heart shuts down, then my place in society weakens, and my, my interacting with other people, right? You get tired, you don't have energy, you can't deal with it. Work is hard. And then it's like, and then I just give up from that, and I fall back into my orange ray, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to spend all day at home today, and like, I don't want to do anything, and and then like, I'm going to get anxious and worry, and I'm going to be just alone with my thoughts, and I don't have my heart here now to help balance all of these, thoughts, and my brain, which is going to run off wild into many directions of thinking, what about this? What about this? What do people think about this? What do people think about that? What if I do this? What if this happen? La 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 la. And so I would say also, right, anxiousness is a form of these orange ray manifestations, and I deal with, I think, many orange ray manifestations at this time. So don't feel that, like I'm some perfect person over here who is like, I'm just telling you how to be a wonderful, epic being. I have many orange ray manifestations, and I try my best to be a part of society and to, be a part of larger groups. And then, I have enough energy, it seems, to attempt to also then serve others in the forms of like this podcast and my Instagram, and just sharing myself in daily life, and just seeing that perception of oneness, and seeing all creation and all of my life as just basically one big opportunity to serve, because it is impossible not to serve, because, my friends, all is the creator. And so no matter where you look, you can only see the creator. In other words, wherever you look, you can only see yourself, or some distortion of yourself. And therefore, why need to control it, my friends? Better to accept it and love it, and it will transform, and the things that are distortions to you will fall away, hopefully, naturally, right? We don't want to necessarily control things into submission. It means we're still holding on to them. What we want to do is accept and love them enough that we allow them to fall away, right? We allow them to say, hey, I no longer need to hold on to this energy. It can just go. Thank you. I love you. Take care. And so that is sort of the solution also to some of the magic of getting yourself out of that orange ray, and trying to bring yourself into a balanced state of perfection, of imperfect perfection. And so I will leave you with this one last quote. I put it as a bonus, is that you may sort of demonstrate you are like a crystal, you as a mind, body, spirit complex with your 7 chakras and your unique balance. And so, you are not just like any other crystal, right? There's many versions of many crystals. And so this is what you may look like to others if you kind of come into yourself and try to activate and love yourself and accept yourself to the best of your ability. In session 47.7, the questioner asks, can you define what you mean by a crystallized entity? Ra answers, I am Ra. We have used this particular term because it has a fairly precise meaning in your language. When a crystalline structure is formed of your physical material, the elements present in each molecule are bonded in a regularized fashion with the elements in each other molecule. Thus, the structure is regular, and when fully and perfectly crystallized, has certain properties. It will not splinter or break, it is very strong without effort, and it is radiant, traducing light into a beautiful refraction, giving pleasure of the eye to many. End of quote. And so, my friends, I hope that you come into yourself and learn to love yourself and accept yourself, and have the courage to move on out of the personal orange ray, step out into the community, and step into the heart of service to others, of both acceptance of yourself and other selves to the best of your ability. We are not perfect. We will have many faults, and any time that you come up against something that you realize, I cannot accept and love this, well, my friend, there you go. You have been given a gift. You have some work to do in in loving that portion of yourself, because that is all that exists out there. So I hope this podcast brought some knowledge of self and some joy and some love to you. I forgot to ask. I was going to ask right at the beginning if you could like the podcast. I keep forgetting you're supposed to do that in podcasts, but I just get too much into it, and I kind of cringe at the fact of asking you to like things. But just do it for the algorithm, please. It helps it get seen by more people. thank you. Leave me a comment. I like to read them. I actually, shall I note, the last few weeks I have been, going through some things and stuff and whatever. And I like at the end of the week, I start to get anxious about making these podcasts, and I get worried, and I start thinking about I want to be perfect and provide like some top quality notch stuff. And then I just, start thinking about all these negative thoughts that pop into my brain about who am I to do that stuff? I'm not good enough. And like, time and time again, you guys, one of you will message me like at the perfect time and just, share something about how this was helpful. You remind me why I do what I do, and I don't do it for that. I just try to do it to be a good example of what I think other people could do. But I don't do it for those words, but I want you to know how much that means to me and how much it's been lifting me up and giving me the extra energy and power to do these podcasts and to keep on serving. And so I appreciate you guys so much. And if you appreciate my attempts at this, if you could please jump on my Patreon, shoot me a one-time PayPal at theoneinfinitecreator.com. You can just scroll down to the support section there. And there are a couple of links because, I'm not particularly rich and I'd like to get out of the city and I need your support. But if you can't, it's all good too. The idea is I want to freely give all of this no matter what. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of the week and I hope you take care.